Emma stepped off the bus and felt a chill run down her spine. The military boot camp stretched out before her like a fortress, strong and unyielding, with its high fences, rows of barracks, and the echoing shouts of instructors. She clutched her bag tightly, trying not to let the fear show. This was nothing like she had ever imagined. She had trained herself mentally for this moment, reading stories, preparing for challenges, and imagining herself strong. But now that she was here, the reality was bigger, tougher, and scarier than she had expected. From the moment she entered, she could feel the eyes of the other recruits on her. They were taller, broader, and looked as if they had been born ready for this life. Some of them sneered and whispered under their breath, casting sideways glances at her small frame. Emma could hear the faint laughter and the murmurs. She's going to break on the first day. Look at her trying. This is going to be fun. Stung, but Emma didn't let it show. She straightened her back, held her head high, and reminded herself why she was here. She wanted to prove that strength was not just in muscle. It was in determination, courage, and heart. The first drill was the physical test. Emma followed the others onto the field, where instructors blew whistles and shouted commands. The air smelled of sweat, dust, and the sharp tang of determination. The recruits ran, jumped, crawled, and pushed themselves to the limits, but Emma struggled to keep up. Her lungs burned, her arms trembled during push-ups, and her legs ached with every sprint. Every misstep made her feel like everyone's eyes were burning into her, silently mocking her lack of strength and experience. During the obstacle course, things got worse. A tall wall loomed before her, and she had to climb over it. The others leaped with ease, grabbing ropes and swinging over like it was nothing. Emma hesitated, gripping the rope with sweaty hands. She climbed slowly, each movement deliberate but awkward. A few recruits snickered, nudging each other and pointing at her struggles. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she refused to give up. One careful push, one determined pull at a time, she reached the top and hoisted herself over. She landed hard, knees aching, but a small spark of pride lit within her. She had done it. Even though she succeeded, the teasing didn't stop. In the mess hall, while lining up for meals, she overheard the same voices. "Did you see her fall? I don't think she'll last a week." Emma tried to ignore it, focusing instead on keeping her pace, following instructions, and quietly observing the routines of others. But the constant laughter and whispers gnawed at her. She realized that to survive here, she would need more than physical strength. She would need mental toughness, patience, and perhaps a few tricks to keep the other recruits from breaking her spirit. As the day went on, Emma noticed small acts of camaraderie between some recruits. They helped each other carry heavy packs, encouraged each other during drills, and shared smiles in moments of brief respite. Emma watched carefully, learning the unspoken rules of this new world. She understood that she needed to find her place, and she also knew that it would not be given to her easily. She had to earn it. Despite the harshness, there were moments that gave her hope. The instructors, though strict and intimidating, offered quick nods of acknowledgement when someone did something right. Emma realized that while the other recruits judged her, the real measure of her worth would come from her own actions, not from the opinions of those who had not walked in her shoes. She held on to that thought tightly. By evening, Emma was exhausted. Her body ached, and her muscles screamed for rest. Yet, there was a quiet determination in her heart that refused to be broken. She had taken the first step into a world that demanded more than she thought she had, and she had survived. As she lay on her bunk that night, listening to the distant sounds of snoring, laughter, and the occasional shouted order, she made a promise to herself. She would not be the weakest recruit. She would not be the one they laughed at tomorrow or the day after. She would find her strength, and when the time came, she would surprise everyone, including herself. That night, Emma realized something important. Boot camp was not just about training the body, it was about testing the spirit. She understood that the road ahead would be long, filled with challenges, and full of people who would try to see her fail. But she also understood that she had a choice: to let fear and mockery defeat her, or to rise above it. She chose to rise. Emma didn't know yet what the future held, but as the moonlight streamed through the barracks window and illuminated her determined face, she felt a spark of hope. This was just the beginning. The laughter, the struggles, and the obstacles. They were all part of the journey that would shape her into someone stronger, someone respected, and someone unforgettable. The next morning, Emma woke up before dawn. Her body ached from the previous day's drills, and her muscles were stiff, but she refused to let the pain stop her. She knew that in boot camp, every second counted, every mistake was noticed, and the eyes of the other recruits were always watching. She forced herself to sit up, shake off the soreness, and get ready for another day of grueling training. As she stepped onto the training grounds, she immediately felt the tension in the air. The other recruits were already lined up, faces serious, muscles taut, ready for another round of physical and mental tests. From the corner of her eye, Emma saw them whispering again. Some of them nudged each other, their expressions a mix of amusement and disbelief. They were still underestimating her, still judging her by her small frame and quiet demeanor. Their laughter and snickers followed her, and at first, it stung. But Emma reminded herself that she didn't need their approval. She only needed to survive and prove herself in her own way. The day's drills were more intense than the previous ones. The instructors put the recruits through obstacle courses, timed runs, and teamwork challenges that tested not only physical strength but also coordination and mental endurance. Emma struggled at first. Her arms trembled as she climbed ropes, her legs burned during sprints, and her hands blistered from gripping the rough surfaces of climbing walls. Every stumble felt like a spotlight on her failures, and she could hear the mocking voices whispering, "She's going to quit," or "Look at her. She can barely lift that." Despite the teasing, Emma refused to let it break her. She remembered the words her father had once told her. Strength isn't just what you see on the outside. The mind and heart can be even stronger than muscles. With that in mind, she slowed her pace when necessary, focused on every movement, and used her small size to her advantage when maneuvering through tight spaces in the obstacle course. She was careful, precise, and determined. Slowly, she started to complete obstacles that the others assumed would take her much longer. Even though her progress was noticeable, the mockery continued. During a team exercise, Emma tried to lift a heavy log alongside her teammates. It was bigger and heavier than anything she had handled before. She struggled to get it off the ground, and some of her teammates laughed openly. "Let me guess, dead weight again," one shouted. Another smirked. "Maybe she should just watch." Emma's cheeks burned, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her humiliated. She took a deep breath, positioned her body correctly, and summoned every ounce of strength she had. Inch by inch, she lifted the log, moving in sync with her teammates until it was successfully carried to the finish line. The instructors nodded, impressed by her determination, even if her peers still whispered and mocked behind her back. During breaks, Emma noticed that some recruits were practicing quietly, perfecting their own skills and learning from each other. She observed them carefully, learning techniques she hadn't considered before. She realized that boot camp wasn't just about being the strongest. It was about strategy, patience, and knowing how to push oneself without panicking. Every mockery, every taunt from her peers, became a small lesson, fuel for her determination rather than a reason to quit. One moment stood out that day. During a shooting drill, the recruits were lining up to demonstrate accuracy. Emma had very little experience with firearms compared to others, but she focused intently, blocked out the whispers of doubt, and aimed carefully. When she fired, her target was hit almost perfectly. Some recruits looked at her with surprise, unable to believe she could achieve such precision. Others tried to downplay it, whispering excuses like, "Beginner's luck." Emma smiled faintly inside. She knew it wasn't luck. It was focus and determination paying off. Despite small victories, the day was emotionally exhausting. Emma felt the weight of isolation. She had no one to back her up, no friends yet in the harsh environment of boot camp. The others continued to laugh at her mistakes, whispering during meals, and pointing out every stumble. Yet, she also started noticing small gestures of respect from a few instructors, nods of acknowledgement when she performed well, and brief moments of encouragement hidden beneath their strict demeanor. These were small signs that her perseverance was being noticed, even if her peers didn't see it. By the evening, Emma's body was drained, but her spirit was still intact. She reflected on the day, thinking about every mistake, every success, and every moment of mockery. She understood that the journey would not be easy. There would be days worse than this, days when she might feel completely alone and incapable. But she also realized that strength came in different forms: physical, mental, and emotional. And perhaps the most important strength of all was resilience. The ability to stand up, even when everyone around you expected you to fall. As Emma lay on her bunk that night, she stared at the ceiling, replaying the day in her mind. She knew the next day would bring more challenges, more obstacles, and more whispers from the other recruits. But she also knew she had proven something to herself, that she could face the laughter, endure the pain, and still keep moving forward. For the first time, she began to feel a quiet sense of pride. She wasn't just a recruit trying to survive. She was someone learning to thrive, someone ready to face whatever boot camp would throw at her next. And somewhere deep inside, a small spark of hope began to grow. Emma realized that this was just the beginning. The laughter, the mockery, and the struggles weren't just obstacles. They were lessons, shaping her into someone stronger, someone smarter, and someone who might one day shock everyone, including those who doubted her. By the third day at boot camp, Emma had begun to settle into a rhythm, though the challenges were far from over. Every morning brought new drills, longer runs, heavier loads, and tougher instructors. But despite the physical strain, Emma had started to notice something unusual: quiet glances and whispered conversations among the recruits. At first, she thought it was just another round of mockery, but soon she realized it was something different, something tied to a secret she had carried with her for a long time. One evening, after a long day of drills, the recruits were asked to change into their regular uniforms for inspection. Emma went to the changing area quietly, taking care not to draw attention to herself. As she lifted her shirt to adjust her gear, a part of her back tattoo became visible. It was large, intricate, and unlike anything most people had seen before. The lines formed a complex design, a mix of symbols, shapes, and letters that seemed mysterious and powerful. A few recruits noticed immediately. Their laughter stopped, replaced by curious murmurs. "What is that?" one asked, leaning closer to get a better look. Another whispered, "Is that a military thing?" The tone was different now. It wasn't mockery, but curiosity, with a hint of unease. Emma kept adjusting her uniform carefully, making sure it was not fully visible, but she could feel their eyes on her back, tracing the lines of the tattoo. Emma had learned long ago that this tattoo was more than just ink on skin. It was a symbol of her past, a mark of experience, and a hint at the skills she had developed long before coming to boot camp. Only a few people in the world could recognize it immediately. It wasn't something she needed to explain. Its meaning would reveal itself at the right moment. For now, she remained silent, her expression calm, even as the whispers around her grew louder. The recruits couldn't stop looking. Some tried to joke again, attempting to mock the design, but their confidence faltered. The intricate patterns made it clear that this tattoo was unusual, not the kind of casual art most people carried. "It looks official," one muttered. Another added, "Maybe she's been somewhere we don't know about." The teasing had stopped for the first time, replaced by a cautious respect mixed with curiosity. Even the instructors, who occasionally walked by, paused for a moment, their eyes flicking to the tattoo with something unspoken in their gaze. Emma, meanwhile, stayed composed. She had been through situations where she had to hide her experience, her strength, and her past to avoid unnecessary attention. Boot camp was different. Here, appearances mattered, and first impressions could make or break someone. She had seen the judgment in the eyes of the other recruits and had decided early on to let her actions, not her words, speak for her. The tattoo, she knew, would eventually tell a story that no one could ignore. During drills that evening, the other recruits kept glancing at her, some cautiously, others with wide-eyed surprise. Emma noticed their reactions but didn't let them distract her. She focused on the tasks at hand, carrying heavy loads, climbing obstacles, and following precise instructions. Yet, the tattoo had shifted something in the dynamics of the group. The mockery was quieter now, replaced with small murmurs of uncertainty. Some of the louder recruits even seemed to hesitate before making fun of her, as if unsure whether they fully understood what they were seeing. Later, in the mess hall, the whispers continued. Emma sat quietly, keeping her posture straight, her expression calm. She overheard fragments of conversations. "Did you see her back? That tattoo. It's not normal. Maybe she's been in special training before." The words didn't bother her. Instead, they reminded her that the tattoo was more than just a piece of art. It was a signal, a key to how people would perceive her when the time was right. She had learned that timing mattered. Revealing everything too soon could create jealousy, fear, or unnecessary attention. Patience was part of her strategy. That night, as she lay on her bunk, Emma thought about how quickly things had changed. The same recruits who had laughed at her clumsiness and small frame were now hesitant to tease her. The tattoo had done something subtle but powerful. It made them rethink their assumptions, made them wonder if she was stronger, smarter, or more experienced than they realized. Emma smiled faintly to herself. It was a small victory, but an important one. She didn't need immediate recognition. The awareness that she could command attention and curiosity without saying a word was empowering. Emma also knew the tattoo carried weight beyond bootcamp. It represented her past missions, the training she had completed, and the life she had lived before arriving here. Most people couldn't see it and understand it fully, but those who did would recognize her capability instantly. It was a silent declaration of her potential, a symbol of strength hidden in plain sight. The recruits' reactions, mixed with surprise and caution, showed that even without words, she could influence how people saw her. By the end of the day, Emma felt a quiet confidence settle over her. Boot camp was still challenging, the drills still brutal, and the other recruits still judgmental at times. But now she had a secret advantage. The tattoo was a reminder of who she was, what she had already achieved, and the skills she could bring to bear. The whispers and curious glances would continue, but Emma was ready. She had patience, strategy, and determination on her side, and that would make all the difference in the days ahead. For the first time, Emma realized that boot camp wasn't just about physical endurance or following orders. It was about presence, perception, and quiet power. Sometimes, the strongest statement didn't come from words or muscles, but from a single, powerful symbol that made everyone stop and take notice. And Emma's tattoo was exactly that. The days at boot camp grew tougher, but Emma began to notice something surprising. Despite the teasing and whispers, she was starting to shine in ways the others didn't expect. While her size and quiet nature still made some recruits doubt her, she discovered that she had skills they could not match. It was as if her past experiences, hard lessons, challenges, and training were quietly giving her an edge that no one could see at first glance. During one morning drill, the recruits were divided into small teams for a navigation exercise. Each team had to find checkpoints across a wide, uneven field, carrying their gear and working together to complete the task as quickly as possible. Most of the recruits struggled to plan a route, arguing among themselves, wasting energy, and losing valuable time. Emma, on the other hand, remained calm. She studied the map carefully, noticed landmarks others overlooked, and suggested a clear route to her team. At first, her teammates hesitated, reluctant to follow instructions from someone they had laughed at. But Emma's confidence and clear reasoning made it hard to ignore her advice. Slowly, they followed her plan, and the team completed the course faster than any other group. The other recruits were shocked. Some tried to brush it off, saying, "It was luck," or "We just got lucky with the route." But others exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that Emma had skills they didn't understand. It was the first time she saw doubt in their eyes, not mockery. For the first time, she felt the quiet satisfaction of being taken seriously, not for her appearance but for what she could do. Later that week, they had a marksmanship drill. The recruits lined up to demonstrate their accuracy, and Emma focused completely. She had practiced shooting before in situations that were far more intense than anything in boot camp, and she approached the task with calm precision. Each shot hit closer to the target than expected, and by the end of the exercise, she had scored among the top recruits. Some of the others tried to shrug it off, but their whispers carried hints of surprise and even a little respect. Emma didn't boast or react. She knew the results would speak for themselves. Teamwork exercises became another opportunity for her to shine. One afternoon, the recruits were tasked with carrying a heavy stretcher across a rugged terrain, simulating a rescue mission. Many of the larger, stronger recruits tried to take control, assuming Emma would be unable to contribute meaningfully. But Emma positioned herself strategically, guiding the team around obstacles, pointing out hazards, and helping lift the stretcher when the terrain got steep. The other recruits began to realize that her intelligence and careful planning mattered as much as brute strength. They were forced to respect her silently, even if they didn't yet admit it openly. Despite her growing successes, Emma remained humble and focused. She knew that her small victories would not erase the days of mockery or the whispers of doubt. The other recruits were still quick to tease when she made small mistakes, and some still lingered in the background, skeptical of her abilities. But Emma had learned something important. She didn't need everyone to believe in her. She only needed to believe in herself. That quiet confidence became her shield against the ridicule, and it gave her an inner strength that others could not see. The tattoo on her back, which had caught so much attention, remained hidden during these exercises, but its presence felt symbolic to her. It reminded her of the skills she already had, the experiences she had survived, and the resilience that had brought her to this moment. It gave her a sense of pride, a private acknowledgement that no one could diminish her accomplishments, whether they understood her fully or not. By midweek, Emma started noticing subtle changes in how the instructors observed her. They didn't call out her mistakes as often, and occasionally, she caught small nods or looks of acknowledgement when she completed a drill with precision. The instructors were strict and rarely gave praise, but Emma recognized their signs. They were seeing her potential, even if her peers were still learning to accept it. That silent acknowledgement felt like a quiet victory, validating her determination and the hours of effort she had put in. Even her fellow recruits began to behave differently around her. A few approached cautiously, asking for advice during drills, or seeking guidance when navigating obstacles. Others avoided open confrontation, recognizing that Emma's skills were not to be underestimated. While the mockery hadn't disappeared completely, it had transformed into a more complex mix of curiosity, caution, and grudging respect. Emma observed this change quietly, understanding that trust and respect were earned, not demanded, and that her consistency was slowly reshaping the opinions of those around her. As the day came to a close, Emma felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She had turned the laughter and doubt into motivation. Each challenge she overcame, each skill she demonstrated, chipped away at the assumptions her peers had made about her. For the first time, she saw that boot camp was not just a test of physical endurance. It was also a test of intelligence, strategy, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. Emma realized that her earlier struggles, the whispers, and the skepticism she faced were all part of a larger lesson. Strength wasn't just in lifting heavy loads or running fast. It was in thinking clearly, acting decisively, and proving your worth through action. That night, as Emma lay on her bunk, she reflected on the day. The sneers of her peers had less power over her now, replaced by the quiet knowledge that she was capable, skilled, and growing stronger with every challenge. She had begun to earn respect without saying a word, relying on her abilities and determination rather than her size or reputation. Boot camp was still grueling, and the days ahead promised even greater challenges, but Emma felt ready. She was no longer just the small recruit who struggled to keep up. She was a competitor, a strategist, and someone whose skills could not be ignored. The days at boot camp had grown even tougher, and by the fifth day, Emma felt the weight of exhaustion pressing on her from every direction. Her muscles were sore, her arms and legs ached from constant drills, and sleep seemed almost impossible in the noisy, crowded barracks. Yet it wasn't just physical fatigue that challenged her, it was the mental and emotional strain. The constant scrutiny, whispers, and occasional mocking from her fellow recruits were like a persistent shadow she couldn't shake. That day started with an obstacle course more difficult than anything they had faced so far. It was long, grueling, and designed to push the recruits to their limits. There were high walls to climb, muddy trenches to crawl through, ropes to swing across, and heavy logs to carry. Each challenge tested not just their bodies, but their determination, focus, and ability to work under pressure. Emma approached it with determination, but even she felt the creeping doubt in her mind. Could she really keep up? Could she survive not just physically, but emotionally, under this constant pressure and ridicule? As she began the course, the familiar whispers started again. "She won't make it," one said. Another smirked. "Watch her fail this time." Emma felt the sting of their words, and for a moment, she hesitated. Her muscles burned, her lungs felt tight, and the thought of giving up flickered in her mind. She could almost hear herself saying, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not cut out for this." It was the first time she truly considered quitting. But then, a memory flashed across her mind. A memory of all the times in her life when she had been underestimated. The times when others had told her she couldn't succeed. She remembered the first time she had climbed a steep hill in pouring rain, or the time she had stayed up all night to prepare for a challenge she wasn't ready for. Each of those moments had seemed impossible, yet she had pushed through. And each time she had emerged stronger, more confident, and more determined. Emma realized that this obstacle course was no different. This was just another test, another moment to prove to herself that she could rise above doubt and fear. She took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from her face, and pushed forward. Inch by inch, she climbed the walls, swung across ropes, and crawled through the mud. Every movement was deliberate, every breath controlled. She refused to let the mocking voices in her head, or from her peers, stop her. Slowly, steadily, she moved through the obstacles. Each step, each pull, each push was a small victory against the exhaustion, the pain, and the doubt. The other recruits watched in silence, some still sneering, others clearly surprised at her determination. Emma noticed the shift in their expressions, even as she focused on completing the course. She realized that her struggle, her refusal to give up, was beginning to change their perception. The laughter that had followed her earlier in the week was now replaced with curiosity, even a little respect. But Emma didn't slow down or seek recognition. She knew that the victory wasn't for them. It was for herself. When she finally reached the last obstacle, a high wall she had failed to climb before, she hesitated for just a moment. Her hands were blistered, her arms screamed in pain, and her legs threatened to give out. But she clenched her teeth, planted her feet firmly, and with a final surge of strength, hoisted herself over the wall. She landed hard on the ground, gasping for breath, but a quiet smile formed on her face. She had done it. She had faced her fear, her doubt, and the mocking voices, and she had emerged victorious. After the course, she sat on the sidelines, catching her breath while her fellow recruits finished. Some avoided her eyes, still unsure what to make of her. Others looked impressed but unwilling to admit it out loud. Emma didn't mind. She had learned long ago that respect earned silently was often more powerful than applause. She had faced her breaking point, confronted it head-on, and refused to let it defeat her. That was the real triumph of the day. Later, during the evening briefing, the instructors reviewed the day's exercises. Emma listened quietly, her body aching, but her spirit invigorated. The instructors didn't single her out with praise. They rarely did, but she noticed small signs. A nod, a brief look of approval, a rare comment on her perseverance. These small gestures meant more than words. They confirmed what she had already known, that she had grown stronger, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. That night, as Emma lay in her bunk, she reflected on the day. She realized that boot camp was not just about completing exercises or winning competitions. It was about endurance, resilience, and the ability to confront failure without letting it define you. She understood now that her toughest battles were not the walls, the mud, or the logs, but the doubts in her mind and the whispers of others. By facing them, she had proven to herself that she could rise above anything. Emma also understood a deeper truth. The journey ahead would be even more challenging. Each day would bring new obstacles, new tests, and new moments where she would feel like giving up. But she had learned that strength came from persistence, from refusing to let fear and ridicule control her actions. And with that knowledge, she felt a quiet confidence settling in her chest. She was ready for the days ahead, ready to face whatever challenges Bootcamp and life threw at her. For the first time, she felt a profound sense of pride. Not because she had proven anything to her peers or instructors, but because she had proven it to herself. She had faced the breaking point, endured the struggle, and emerged stronger. And deep inside, she knew that this resilience, the strength of spirit, would carry her through the toughest days yet to come. The morning at Bootcamp started like any other, with the harsh whistle blasts of the instructors and the cold, crisp air biting at the recruits' faces. Emma felt the usual soreness from the previous days, but today carried a sense of anticipation she couldn't explain. She had grown accustomed to the routine, the drills, and even the whispered judgments of her fellow recruits. Yet, deep down, she knew something was about to change. The commander had announced a special inspection that day. Every recruit was to line up in formation, their uniforms perfectly adjusted, gear neatly in place, and posture flawless. Emma stood in line, her small frame steady, her eyes focused straight ahead. Her peers were busy adjusting themselves, some exchanging nervous jokes, others tossing glances at Emma with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. But today, no one could have predicted what would happen next. As the commander walked down the line, inspecting each recruit with a sharp, calculating gaze, Emma felt her pulse quicken. She knew that any misstep could invite criticism, but she also knew that this was the moment her tattoo, hidden until now, might finally be revealed. She had kept it mostly concealed under her uniform, but today's drill required a uniform adjustment that exposed her back. A flick of the sleeve, a movement she hadn't fully anticipated, and the tattoo was suddenly visible. For a brief, frozen moment, time seemed to stop. The commander, a figure of authority who rarely showed emotion, halted mid-step. His eyes widened slightly, then narrowed as he studied the intricate design sprawled across Emma's back. The other recruits, who had been whispering and laughing just moments before, went silent. Emma stood perfectly still, her posture calm, but inside, she felt a quiet thrill. She knew the tattoo would speak louder than words ever could. The design was complex, intricate, and unmistakable. It was not just a piece of art. It was a symbol, a patch of distinction that signified something elite, something few could ever attain. The commander's frozen expression was enough to convey what the recruits could not yet understand. Emma's tattoo was a mark of honor, of experience, and of a skill level that far surpassed anyone's assumptions about her. In that instant, the whispers of doubt and mockery evaporated. The commander took a slow step closer, his eyes scanning every detail of the tattoo. Emma could feel the weight of his gaze, a mixture of surprise, recognition, and respect. He spoke, but his voice was calm, authoritative, and measured, carrying a tone that made the recruits immediately straighten and fall silent. "Stand forward," he ordered, and Emma obeyed, stepping out of line with a composed demeanor. Her heart pounded, but her face betrayed nothing. She had anticipated this moment for years, and now it had arrived. As she stood before him, the commander's eyes did not leave the tattoo. Emma could see a flicker of understanding, as if he recognized the history, the missions, and the experiences that had led her to this point. The tattoo was not just ink. It was a testament to her past achievements, a silent declaration of the challenges she had already conquered. The recruits around her stared, some in shock, others in disbelief. They had spent days mocking her, assuming she was weak, inexperienced, and unworthy of respect. Now, in a single glance, everything they believed was turned upside down. The commander's voice cut through the stunned silence. "This design, it matches the insignia of an elite program," he said quietly, almost to himself, but loud enough for Emma to hear. The recruits exchanged glances, eyes widening as they realized the significance. What they had laughed at, what they had dismissed as just a tattoo, was in fact a symbol of extraordinary skill and experience. Emma's presence at boot camp was no accident. She had arrived with knowledge, training, and abilities that none of them could yet comprehend. Emma felt a mixture of pride and relief. She had never sought recognition for her past, but now, standing before the commander, she understood the power of silent strength. The tattoo had revealed what words could not. She was capable, formidable, and deserving of respect. The whispers from the other recruits were gone, replaced by awe and uncertainty. Some tried to look away, unwilling to confront the reality of how wrong they had been. Others stared, their faces a mixture of admiration and disbelief. The commander gave a brief nod, his eyes still fixed on Emma. Without another word, he turned and continued down the line, leaving a charged silence in his wake. Emma returned to her position, calm and composed, but she felt a quiet transformation within herself. She had always known her own worth, but now it was visible to those around her. The mockery, the doubts, and the whispers that had followed her were no longer relevant. She had earned a place of respect, not by boasting, not by demanding it, but by allowing her actions, and now her tattoo, to speak for themselves. The rest of the day carried a different energy. The other recruits were cautious around her, some avoiding eye contact, others lingering curiously, trying to understand the woman who had silently impressed the commander. Emma continued with the drills as before, her focus unwavering, but she could sense a shift in the air. The dynamic had changed. The teasing and mockery had been replaced with careful observation, respect, and perhaps a hint of fear. That night, as Emma lay on her bunk, she reflected on the day. She realized that boot camp had always been a test, not just of physical strength, but of patience, resilience, and character. The tattoo, a symbol of her past, had become a key turning point. It had revealed her hidden depth, commanded respect, and changed the way the world around her perceived her. For the first time, she felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing that her abilities, her history, and her strength could no longer be underestimated. Emma understood something important. The journey was far from over. Boot camp would continue to challenge her, push her to her limits, and test her resolve. But now she carried an unspoken power, one that no mocking peer could take away, and one that would guide her through every challenge yet to come. She closed her eyes, feeling a mixture of pride, anticipation, and quiet excitement, knowing that the days ahead would only reveal more of her strength and skill to the world. The day after the commander had noticed her tattoo, Emma felt a quiet but powerful shift in the energy at boot camp. The morning air was colder than usual, or maybe it just felt that way because the tension was thick with anticipation. Her fellow recruits moved with a little more caution around her. Some avoided her gaze, while others stole nervous glances, whispering in hushed tones about what had happened the day before. Emma walked among them calmly, her uniform perfectly in place, her posture steady. She had learned long ago that confidence didn't need to shout. It simply needed to exist. During the morning drill, the recruits were assigned a team exercise that required speed, strategy, and cooperation. Emma's team included some of the largest and strongest recruits in the camp, the ones who had mocked her relentlessly in the early days. At first, they hesitated when she began giving instructions. They had to remind themselves that she had only recently revealed the tattoo, the symbol of her past experience. Her peers were unsure how to react, caught between curiosity, fear, and lingering doubts. Emma didn't falter. She spoke calmly, clearly, and decisively. Take the left flank. Cover the rear. Move in formation, she instructed, pointing to the best path through the obstacle course. Her voice was firm, confident, yet not arrogant. The team members exchanged uncertain glances, but they followed her directions, because there was something undeniable about the way she carried herself. Every movement she suggested was precise, and soon her team began to gain the advantage over others in the exercise. As they navigated the obstacles, her teammates began to see what she had been hiding all along. Her small frame wasn't a weakness. It was an asset. She moved quickly, spotting dangers and opportunities others missed. She lifted when necessary, pushed when needed, and always thought a few steps ahead. Slowly but surely, the mocking that had once filled the air was replaced by astonishment. Some of the largest recruits, the ones who had laughed at her during early drills, now found themselves listening intently, following her lead, and even learning from her strategies. The commander, observing from the sidelines, didn't need to say anything. His silence carried approval. Emma could feel his gaze occasionally on her, watching her performance with a keen, analytical eye. She knew that every action, every decision she made, was being noticed. But unlike before, this awareness didn't create pressure. It strengthened her. She had transformed the mocking and doubt into fuel, and it was pushing her further than she had ever imagined she could go. During the team exercise, a moment arrived that could have been disastrous. The team faced a steep, slippery slope with heavy gear in hand, a situation that required coordination and careful timing. Emma noticed that one of her teammates was about to slip and possibly drop a crucial piece of equipment. Without hesitation, she lunged forward, stabilizing him with a firm grip, keeping the gear secure, and shouting clear instructions to the rest of the team. The move was precise, quick, and effective. Everyone followed her lead perfectly, and the team successfully crossed the obstacle without a single mishap. The other recruits who were watching were silent, their expressions a mix of surprise and disbelief. This was the same Emma they had mocked, the one they had called weak and unworthy. Now they were seeing her in a completely different light. Her intelligence, quick thinking, and decisive actions had saved the team and proved her competence beyond any doubt. For some, it was a humbling moment, one they would not forget anytime soon. After the exercise, the commander stepped forward. For the first time, he addressed the entire group directly. "Observe," he said, pointing to Emma. His voice carried authority, respect, and a hint of admiration. This recruit has demonstrated not only skill and endurance but also leadership, composure under pressure, and the ability to make quick, correct decisions in high-stress situations. Learn from her example. The statement was simple, but its impact was enormous. Emma felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the respect she had earned was genuine and that it came from her actions, not her words. The rest of the day was filled with drills and exercises, but Emma noticed the difference in how people treated her. No one dared mock her now. The whispers were gone. Instead, recruits came to her for advice, asking questions about strategies or techniques. Some were cautious, others hesitant, but all were aware that Emma was someone to respect. Even those who had been the loudest in their ridicule were now careful, watching her closely, perhaps even learning from her in silence. By evening, Emma reflected on the transformation she had achieved. It wasn't about winning every drill or outperforming everyone physically. It was about earning respect, changing perceptions, and proving that strength came in many forms. She realized that her journey at Bootcamp wasn't just shaping her physically. It was shaping her character, her confidence, and her ability to influence others without arrogance or force. That night, as Emma lay on her bunk, she thought about the irony of it all. The same people who had mocked her, laughed at her, and underestimated her were now listening, observing, and learning from her example. It was proof that persistence, skill, and quiet confidence could overcome ridicule and doubt. Emma smiled softly to herself, knowing that she had reached a turning point. From this moment forward, she was no longer the recruit they doubted. She was the one they would measure themselves against. Boot camp was still challenging. The days ahead would test her even further, and the obstacles would not disappear. But Emma now carried something far more valuable than muscle or skill. She carried the respect and recognition she had quietly earned, and the knowledge that she had transformed herself into someone truly formidable. She had not just survived the mockery. She had transcended it, and that realization filled her with pride, confidence, and anticipation for the days to come. The final days of boot camp arrived, and Emma could feel the difference in the air. The once harsh whispers, the mocking laughter, and the sideways glances from her peers had all disappeared. In their place was a cautious respect, a quiet acknowledgement of her skill, determination, and quiet strength. The same recruits who had doubted her, laughed at her struggles, and whispered behind her back now observed her with admiration, sometimes even seeking her guidance during drills. Emma walked among them with quiet confidence, knowing that her journey had brought her to this point not through arrogance, but through persistence, courage, and resilience. The last exercise of boot camp was designed to test everything the recruits had learned: strength, endurance, strategy, and teamwork. Emma stood in line, her uniform clean, her posture straight, and her mind focused. She knew that this was more than just a physical challenge. It was the culmination of everything she had endured: the mockery, the struggles, the exhaustion, and the doubts. And this was her opportunity to show not only herself, but everyone around her, what she was truly capable of. As the exercise began, Emma's team faced a complex course filled with obstacles that tested balance, strength, and coordination. While others panicked or hesitated, Emma remained calm and composed. Her previous experiences, her training, and her quiet determination allowed her to anticipate challenges before they appeared. She guided her team, helping them move efficiently, pointing out safe paths, and ensuring that everyone maintained their pace. The teamwork was seamless, not because she forced it, but because she had earned their respect and trust through her consistent actions. Midway through the course, a particularly difficult challenge appeared. A steep, muddy slope that required every member to work together to pull a heavy rope across a chasm. The larger recruits initially tried to take control, but Emma stepped forward with quiet authority, assessing the situation and devising a strategy. She instructed smaller recruits to stabilize the rope at certain points while the stronger members pulled with controlled power. Her clear plan worked flawlessly. The rope crossed the chasm smoothly, with no one injured or struggling unnecessarily. Her teammates exchanged impressed glances, realizing that her intelligence and leadership had made the difference. By the time they reached the final obstacle, a tall wall requiring strength and coordination, Emma's team was exhausted, but they moved with confidence. She led the way, demonstrating the proper technique to climb efficiently. Her teammates followed, mimicking her movements and timing. When the last person cleared the wall, the instructors nodded in approval. Emma's team had completed the course not just successfully, but with precision and efficiency that impressed even the most skeptical observers. After the exercise, the recruits gathered for the final review. The commander stepped forward, his eyes scanning the group before resting briefly on Emma. He addressed the recruits, his voice carrying authority and quiet pride. This boot camp tests not only physical ability but also perseverance, intelligence, and character, he said. One recruit, in particular, has demonstrated all of these qualities consistently throughout the course. Observe and learn from her example. His words were measured, but their impact was profound. The recruits looked at Emma with a mix of awe and newfound respect. Emma felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She had not only survived boot camp, but she had transformed it into a journey of personal triumph. She had faced ridicule, fatigue, and self-doubt, and had emerged stronger, more confident, and respected. She realized that the true reward was not just completing the course or receiving recognition. It was the growth she had achieved, the inner strength she had discovered, and the resilience that would guide her in the days to come. Later, as she packed her gear and prepared to leave the barracks, Emma reflected on the journey. She remembered the first day, when she had been nervous, weak, and unsure of herself. She remembered the laughter and mockery that had made her question her place in the camp. And she remembered the quiet determination that had pushed her forward, the small victories that had gradually built her confidence, and the moment her tattoo had revealed her hidden strength. Each memory reminded her that perseverance, patience, and self-belief were far more important than the opinions of others. Her fellow recruits, now familiar with her capability and calm authority, approached her with quiet admiration. Some thanked her for guidance during exercises, while others simply nodded, acknowledging her skill and leadership. Emma accepted their gestures with grace, understanding that respect earned through action was more powerful than any words could convey. She didn't boast, she didn't gloat, She simply knew that her journey had transformed her into someone others could trust and follow. As the sun set on the final day of boot camp, Emma stood outside, looking at the field where she had struggled, grown, and ultimately triumphed. She felt a deep sense of pride, not just in her accomplishments, but in the person she had become. Boot camp had tested her in every way, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But she had faced every challenge with courage, resilience, and determination. She had earned the respect of the commander, the instructors, and her fellow recruits, and she had discovered her own strength along the way. In the end, Emma realized that boot camp had taught her far more than drills and exercises. It had taught her that true strength was not just in muscles, speed, or skill. It was in perseverance, patience, and self-belief. It was about facing challenges head-on, learning from failures, and refusing to let ridicule or doubt define you. Emma's journey had transformed her from a nervous, underestimated recruit into a strong, confident, and respected individual. Someone whose quiet strength would inspire others long after the camp was over. As she walked away from the barracks for the last time, Emma carried with her more than memories of hardship. She carried the lessons, the growth, and the quiet triumph of a journey that had tested her limits and revealed the remarkable strength that had always been within her. Boot camp had ended, but Emma knew that her story, her strength, and her determination were only beginning.